Hey, we're David and Tracy Sellers.
And like you, we've made vows to keep. Today's show is going to be kind of a fun one for me, at least, because it's a topic that is something that's very near and dear to my heart. As I've gone through the progression we're going to be talking about today, being someone who's an observer in a relationship to someone who's actually a champion for that relationship. Now, Tracy, I want to tell the listeners about one of my many vices in life, which is YouTube car videos. I could seemingly watch an endless supply of videos on YouTube about building hot rods. And yeah, I'm a car guy if you don't know that, but there's several YouTube channels that right now are just explosive in growth. And there's a common thread that I keep seeing in them. One that I think we should go, if this vows to keep thing doesn't work out, we're gonna go do YouTube videos with you and me building cars, because this is the common thread I see, is that anytime a guy has his girl working side by side with him, and they actually like work well together, the comment section on those videos is just explosive. You see this mixture of guys saying, man, my wife is so busy being a mom, she'd never want to be a wife with me in this, or I wish she would care like that, or I would so love to be married to this person who's in the video. Mm-hmm. They just totally fall all over a relationship that actually works. Now you see some that are more resentful. They're like, you know what, this is my hobby and I'm just grateful that I can have a little time away from this cranky woman that I'm married to.
Yikes,
yeah.
Right? But there's probably like a wife equivalent of that. Like, what are you doing out in the garage, and where, like, what happened to our soulmate companionship that we had? That's probably the wife's other side of that. I know a lot of people that know us say, why are you guys always touching each other? Why are you guys always in public holding each other's hands? Well, we do it at home too. Last night sitting at the dinner table, I've got my hand on his leg. It's just kind of how David and I roll. But a lot of women would look at that and kind of be resentful that their own marriage doesn't reflect that. Well, it's not about me and David and our relationship. It's because we all want to feel pursued. I know at the end of the day, I do. I bet you do too.
Absolutely.
But a lot of us don't. And what ends up happening is we don't reciprocate to the other person. We just end up pursuing what is meaningful to us, what makes us happy. And I think this quote unquote we or us of marriage slowly transitions into me or my or I, and even sometimes the they and the them, like the kids and the spouse, the kids and the coworkers, not the spouse, and friends, anybody but the spouse. And I know that David and I at times have forgotten that we, and when we find ourselves in that spot, it's because we've lost sight of one of God's main purposes for marriage. And David's actually going to talk about that for just a minute.
Yeah, in Genesis chapter 2, we see that God gives Eve to Adam. It was a solution to a problem that God himself identified. He says in Genesis 2, it's not good for man to be alone. I mean, no truer words have been said.
Yes.
But he's got an answer. He says, I'm going to make a helper that is suitable for him. And this is one of the best verses in the Bible. I thank God for that every day, for that helper. Because up until this point in creation, God had stated over and over and over again, it's good, it's good, it's good. And for the first time, God says, whoa, that's actually not good. I think I need to do a little bit of something special, something extra here to allow this man to have someone who's going to serve alongside him and help steward this creation that I've just given them. Well, at Vows to Keep, we sit with couples who come to us all the time, and it's like they're in this state of forgetfulness, a state that we actually can see in Adam and Eve at a certain point, where they're lost in sin, in selfishness. They are totally confused about how could I ever get back to the we that we're talking about. It's really, the problem is that the me and the my has gotten so big, I can't actually see anything else. They've forgotten, maybe they never actually understood at all, that God intended a purpose for their marriage. And that is something that when they're not focused on that purpose, it prepares them for marital defeat at the hands of the enemy.
And that enemy, we can see back in Genesis chapter 2 and 3, he's already starting to work. He's working to convince us even now, like he convinced Eve, hey, you're better off alone. You're better off just chasing after it, trying to capture through any means what feels good to you, what is going to make you feel good and whole and wise. to get us to that place of isolation where we believe that lie, we're each in our own camps, the enemy uses this type of tug and war argument between us. Now, maybe you and your spouse don't argue. Maybe it's just a silent argument, or maybe it's an all-out screaming match. I don't know what your home looks like, but there is a tug of war where we as couples and then as individuals, we're gonna try to say, hey, this is how we're gonna spend our time and our money and our talents. And like David just did to me, he yanks one way and I yank the other, and we end up in the mud in the middle. We want so badly, I think, sometimes for our spouse just to get us. Like,
Yeah.
I just want you to understand me and get on board with my plans. And I get tired of waiting for you to come alongside me. I get tired of waiting for you to be my cheerleader and my advocate.
And this back and forth thing can go on for a lifetime. We've met couples that have been married for 30, 40, 50 years even, and they have deep-seated hurt. And the deep hurt, the deep bitterness and resentment, the unforgiveness, I mean, it is everywhere in the relationship. Why is that? Well, here's the punchline. When our spouse doesn't show interest in what we're doing, we translate that into the fact that they're not interested in me.
I know I've definitely made that translation before. Now, it's going to sound like, just for a minute, I'm veering off our topic here, but trust me, bear with me, I'm going to come right back to it. This all is going to make sense in a second. So Vows to Keep is a not-for-profit marriage ministry. I don't know if you knew that or not, but that means that we fundraise in order to minister to couples. We do that through radio, through events all throughout the year, and through couple-to-couple counseling. And we've learned in this fundraising process that there's a progression that people make. And David kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but people can go from being an observer, and this would be someone who just knows about us and is like, yay, you, go you. Someone who's a participant, and that would be someone who is a radio listener, someone who comes to one of our events.
That'd be you.
Absolutely. And then there's the champions, and those are the people who say, I'm going to give to you every single month because I'm on mission with you. I don't just approve of your mission with a thumbs up. I want to be working alongside you. They're the ones that send people to us for counseling. They're the ones that come to the events and they volunteer at the events.
So it's an evolution that we actually are optimistic that all of you as radio listeners, anyone who's come to one of our events, but especially our counselees, that's a transition that we hope that they're making. And we want to be on mission together with you to really build this body of Christ, especially the marriage part, the family part of it. And when all of us work together and do our part, we can accomplish what Ephesians 4 talks about. And that's what we mean by champion. It's someone who is yoked up with you, plowing the same ground as God's called you to work. So let's shift gears and go back to your marriage. Thinking about that progression from being an observer to a participant to someone who's a champion and really an owner of a cause. Maybe your spouse hasn't gotten to that level with you. Maybe they're still kind of watching to see what you do and really observing. Or maybe they know your patterns. They know what's coming next, and frankly, they're kind of tired of it. They're almost to the point where they've given up trying to change you even. You feel like, okay, I've tried to participate in what they're doing, and honestly, it really didn't pay off. In fact, maybe I even got burned. Or you saw your spouse give some fickle attempt at participating in something that meant a lot to you, but they didn't stick it out for the long run. So why should I do that for them?
So in today's broadcast of Vows to Keep Radio, we're going to talk about what it means to be your spouse's champion, why you're called to do it, what keeps us on the sidelines in that observer camp for long periods of time. And we're going to answer some of the questions you might already be thinking about in the back of your head, like, what if what they're after is sinful? What do I do with that? I don't want to champion that. Or maybe it's not sinful, but it's selfish, and I don't want to feed into that, so what's my position? Or how do I be their champion if what they're after doesn't line up with my goals for our family, and my goals are godly? We're going to get to all that, so we're really glad you're here today. Listen to the entire broadcast on our website, vowstokeep.com.